what we have is we have a positive result on the 9th for which there has been no challenge. Okay? They're going to discuss some of the in-competition testing possibly on the 31st. The state stands by and will submit the matter based upon Smurtle's analysis pre and post, finding the presence of the drostanolone metabolite. Okay? I already think the commission has enough evidence based upon I won't call it an admission yet, but based upon the results of the 9th that have not been contested, essentially. They haven't asked for the Bs to be tested. Okay? In his answer, you're going to see that you have seen that he's admitting the use of a supplement. Again, this was not disclosed on the pre-fight medical questionnaire, and he's attributing the use of that supplement to the positive result for the drostanolone. Okay? My point about... Sorry.
Say that again, please.
Mr. Silva is saying that he took a supplement, and that the supplement, according to his own testing of this supplement, for which I have no data, but taking it on face value, he's saying he took a supplement, he tested it, the report related to that testing of the supplement revealed the presence of drostanolone metabolite. Okay, so my point about that admission, it's an affirmative defense styled in the complaint, but it's really an admission to me. The drostanolone, they're saying we have an explanation for it. It's because I took a supplement, I sent it to a lab, and it came back for drostanolone. That kind of, to me, clears the issue on the 31st, because the 31st, again, only relates to the drostanolone. That's what Smurtle said was in there, and whether or not another lab may have detected it on a screen or didn't, I don't see it as relevant, because he's already saying I took a supplement that was, in his explanation, will be contaminated, and it relates to drostanolone. So to me, you've got no challenge of the results on the 9th for both of the steroids. You've got an admission that I took a supplement that had drostanolone in it, and so whether another lab screened for it and it came back positive or negative or not, Smurtle found it. And you've got the admission anyway, so you have enough evidence to make that finding on the 31st. I just want to say I already think you have enough in the record to make a finding because of what I said related to the 9th. It's not really challenged, and then you have the admission of using something. I leave it to you to weigh the credibility of that, given no independent procurement, no simultaneous reporting. But if it's gonna be what he testifies to, then it's an admission, and you can make a finding based upon his admission.
I have a quick timeline question. We tested on the 9th and the 31st. Were there any tests conducted in between that period of time?
Yes, Smurtle conducted a test on the 19th and reported no adverse results.
Okay.
And Mr. Eccles, in addition to making your opening statement, though, you're going beyond that and you're doing the presentation of your case at this point in time, correct?
Yes, I am, because I think we have admissions, and I'm asking the matter to be submitted based upon the exhibits and the admissions.
Good deal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. I'm Michael Alonso, and I'm here on behalf of Anderson Silva. Present with me today is Mr. Anderson Silva. Also is Mr. Paul Scott, who is our expert on anti-doping, and we can, however the Commission wants to handle Mr. Scott's credentials, we can do that. There's also an interpreter here, so however
Let's swear them in first.
Mr. Pope? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's start with Mr. Silva. Mr. Silva, please raise your right hand. Sir, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Scott?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, we are here today in connection with the First Amendment complaint that was filed by the Commission against Mr. Silva. I think before I get into the summary, it's important to note that Mr. Silva has had a long career in MMA, and before this Commission has never had a blemish or any other negative test. And I think it's also important to say he cooperated with every one of the tests that was asked of him, including the January 9th and the 19th out-of-competition testing. Our summary of Mr. Silva's responses to the allegations of the First Amendment complaint are as follows. With respect to all the allegations related to his use or administration of anabolic steroids, Mr. Silva denies that he ever willingly, intentionally, or knowingly took anabolic steroids. After the First Amendment complaint was filed, we all met with Mr. Silva, including Mr. Paul Scott, and again, I'm happy to, for the questioning of Mr. Scott and to get his background in as an expert at whatever point the commission so chooses. We met with Mr. Silva and went through the complaint with him. He maintained that he had never intentionally or knowingly taken any anabolic steroids. As a result, we determined through Mr. Scott that we had to find the source of the two substances that came up in the test results from Smyrtle. At that point, we didn't know about the Quest results. Mr. Silva provided Mr. Scott a list of supplements, and Mr. Scott tested those supplements, and he can get into more detail, the technical detail of what his findings were.
Can you be more specific? He provided him a list, or he provided him the actual supplements he had in his possession?
He provided them with both.
Both.
With both,
Okay.
Commissioner Marnell and Mr. Scott. I just, it's very technical, so I'd rather have him handle it, but yes, he provided him with both.
And do you have a list of those supplements that were being ingested both in the January 9th timeframe as well as the January 31st timeframe?
Yeah, Mike.
So I have the list of supplements that were provided to me on my computer. I don't have anything that can speak to what was being taken.
So in
I
other
have
words,
the list that was provided to me. That's
Right.
what I have.
so Dr. Scott is it
Yes,
doctor? So Dr. Scott has a list of supplements that was provided to him. And does your client then acknowledge that he was ingesting those supplements in the January 9th and the January 31st time?
I think he'll acknowledge that he was taking them on. The dates I'm not clear on, but yes, he was ingesting those.
All right, so he was ingesting those, but you're unclear as to the dates, and so when we talk to him, we can ask him those questions. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, I believe that at least one of the supplements, the one that we're focused on, he was ingesting on a regular basis in the time frame. I'm just not clear on the other supplements on when he started or stopped those. And so,
Mr. Scott, real quick, he testified that he is a doctor.
I did not.
Okay.
Again, I'm Mr.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Okay.
My apologies.
No, that's
I
all right.
was trying to flatter you, I guess.
It's all good.
he's a Juris
I have a
doctor.
BS and a JD
JD gives you the,
in Europe,
all right,
not here.
all right. We'll let Mr. Alonso continue with his opening statement. How about that?
And again, Mr. Scott can get into more detail on this. Is one of the supplements, the supplement that came up as contaminated with drostanolone. Mr. Scott can go through what he questioned Mr. Silva about and what that supplement was used for. We did not find, for the record, any of the supplements that were contaminated with the 17-methyl-androstenedione. But the one supplement did test positive for drostanolone. And just to clear the record, it didn't test positive for drostanolone metabolite. It tested positive for drostanolone. And again, the androstenedione that was detected by Smyrtle. We did not find that. My understanding is it was a trace amount that was found in the January 9th test. It did not come back in the 19th test or in any of the pre or the post-fight Smyrtle or Quest results on the 31st. And that's why I think in our answer we responded that given that Mr. Silva's position is he did not knowingly or intentionally take any anabolic steroids, that the androstenedione and it was a trace amount came back as a result of some contamination of the supplement. We have no other source for it. I'd like to turn to the fight night test results involving Quest. And again, we understand that there are the Smyrtle results that Mr. Eccles referred to, but I just want to give the commission an understanding of how the Quest results unfolded for us. In early April, Mr. Eccles contacted me and told me that there was some finding by Quest that he was still looking into and he would get back to me. Several weeks later, he was conferring with the toxicologist. He got back to me on April 17th and told me that Quest had performed an anabolic steroid panel that was part of their pre-fight testing. And we were unaware of this until April of this year. And that test came back negative for anabolic steroids, including drostanolone and the 17-methyl androstenedione. There was no positive findings for any anabolic steroid. On the 17th is when we requested two things. We requested the litigation packet for that particular test, and because there was a positive result for the benzos on the Quest post-fight test, we knew there would be a B sample, so we requested that B sample be tested for anabolic steroids. And the reason for that was obvious. We were trying to do an apples-to-apples comparison to see if the Quest results would come back the same way. It took some time for that to be agreed to, but ultimately, my understanding is that Quest tested that on July 8th, and those results were reported to us on July 22nd. So that would have been the post-fight anabolic steroid test on the B sample for Quest, and those results were negative. They confirmed negative. So in summary of the fight night tests,
On the B sample or the A sample on the post-fight, there was a trace of the benzos?
on the
the
A
Quest.
sample there were the benzos, and
On the Quest.
that's correct,
So then you tested the B sample,
for anabolic steroids.
and that B sample came back negative with no trace of what was previously confirmed in the A sample.
No.
No?
No, they didn't test.
We didn't test for the benzos
Okay.
on the B sample. We're admitting
Tested
the
for steroids.
benzos, we're not
Okay.
contesting the benzos.
Got it, thank you.
So in summary of the fight night test, the complaint alleges that there's violations by Mr. Silva for the use or administration of the banned substances either before or during a contest in connection with the fight night test. And those allegations are based upon the Smyrtle test, which doesn't, the complaint, our position is just doesn't provide all of the facts there. The complaint was amended. It was an initial complaint, and then it was amended when the benzos test came back. But the complaint was never amended to deal with the Quest negative results that came back, and that's why we're going through this in the detail we're going through it, because we did not find out about that until obviously April, and then confirmation that on the second test in July. So we have a situation here where you have, for fight night at least, you have positive tests for anabolic steroids by one lab that is used by the commission, and negative results for anabolic steroids by another lab that the commission uses. Again, we did not request that those, we didn't request them, other than once the pre-fight test confirmed negative, and we were made aware of that we asked that B sample for post-night be tested, because we thought it was relevant so the commission could see you ultimately have two positive tests and two negative tests for those pre and post-fight tests. Also, we want to point out for the commission, Mr. Scott, this is where this gets very technical as well. Based on what Mr. Scott has been able to look at in terms of the Smyrtle tests and the levels, and I'm going to butcher the description because this isn't my forte, but and so when you compare the Quest tests, the negative results on the anabolic steroids, to the Smyrtle tests, and you look at the levels and how those differing decisions were made, it is our position that had a Quest test been done on January 9th, you'd have a negative result. Quest would have come back with a negative result for the drostanolone. I have no position on the 17-methyl androstenedione because we weren't able to get that far. But for the drostanolone, hypothetically, had you had a Quest, the circumstances are very similar, and had you had a test there, so ultimately you could have a situation where you have positive and negative tests going in each direction for every one of the tests that we're dealing with on anabolic steroids. With respect to the allegations in the complaint regarding Mr. Silva's use or administration of the two benzos, Mr. Silva will acknowledge and admit that he used the benzos the night before the fight, and used them. He couldn't sleep, he had back pain, he had some anxiety, and so he took those. But he does disagree with the allegations that he failed to disclose them. he turned in the medical questionnaire on the 30th. He didn't take or administer the benzos until that night. So in terms of, that wasn't something that he thought about, and he can tell you in his own words, but he's admitting that he used them, he took them for a reason. It wasn't for performance enhancing. In fact, it probably would have done the exact opposite. But that's the reason that he took them, and we're admitting that, and not contesting that they were in his system and that he used them. So based on, and I want to go back to just to touch on the testing and the supplement, and Mr. Scott can go into detail on this, and hopefully it'll help to explain why we're taking this position. You have the drostanolone on the 9th. You have it on the 31st pre and post fight for Smyrtle tests. You have these Quest tests that come out with negative results. In between the 9th and the 31st, you have a test on the 19th that comes back Smyrtle negative. And you have a supplement that's found to have drostanolone in it that he's taking for another purpose. He wasn't taking it for performance enhancing, didn't know it had contained any anabolic steroids. That's what Mr. Silva will testify to. And all we're trying to do to put this all together is that it's consistent with him taking something that was contaminated. It wasn't intentional. He didn't do it knowingly. You have small amounts on the 9th. You have none on the 19th. You have amounts on the 31st pre and post fight, but that also result in negative test results for those pre and those post fight tests. And that's the summary of our position. And based on that, we understand that it's a strict liability standard. I think there's a question here, and obviously the chain of custody and how that was all done, we don't disagree with Mr. Eccles on that at all. We did this on our own. Mr. Scott has impeccable credentials. He can walk you through what happened on the testing of the supplements. But I think even just the point is, even though the statute is a strict liability statute, there has to be room in the intent of that, the statute and the regulations, that if somebody is taking something for a different purpose and it is contaminated with something that's on the banned list, that has to be taken into consideration. And whether it's this case or maybe another case, sometimes there may be something, we don't see it very often in the United States, maybe with pharmacies, but it does happen in other places, and Mr. Scott can address that as well. And so I think, our answer, as you've seen, we're asking that he not be found in violation of the statute. I mean, that's our first position based on the factors that we've outlined here today, and hopefully can provide additional evidence to the commission. But alternatively, we're not contesting that the 17-methylandrosterone was in there. We don't know. We don't have a source for it. And that if you find that he violated the regulations, that you treat him as a first-time offender, and you take into consideration that all of his history, that he's never tested positive, he's never had an issue with the commission or any other commission, that you take into consideration his age, the fact that he cooperated with the tests, including the out-of-competition test, without any worry whatsoever. As far as I understand from the record, there was no concern whatsoever on his part. You take all those things into consideration.
At some point earlier this year, I think it would have been around February or maybe March, I was contacted by Nathan Gable to review some data that had been generated by the Smyrtle laboratory. I analyzed that data, provided them with what I saw on it, and suggested to them that there was nothing wrong with the data that I saw, and that I offered to attend a B sample if they had decided to do it. They did not on those samples. And I suggested to them at that point a course of action would be to start examining everything that the athlete ingested. And I was at some point given a list of supplements and an accompanying set of photographs of the labels for those supplements. I gave them recommendations on testing as to where we should start. And some of which were produced by pharmaceutical companies such as Roche, and I'm forgetting the other one. There were two pharmaceutical companies I suggested there was practically no chance that anything would be in a pharmaceutical product, and we didn't test those at all. I subjected the remaining supplements, which I believe were 4 or 5 different supplements, one liquid and several powders, to LCMS testing for both drostanolone and for 17-methyl androstenediol. None of the testing showed any 17-methyl androstenediol. There were trace amounts of drostanolone propionate in one of the supplements. That supplement was something that was represented to me. It was a liquid supplement, and it was represented to me to be a supplement for sexual performance.
All right, so in summary, you didn't do any testing of the Roche supplements. There were 4 to 5 additional supplements, and you did submit those non-Roche supplements then to testing.
Correct.
All right, and approximately how many were the Roche supplements?
I think there were 2 medications. I think I received a total of 7 supplements, 5 of which were subjected to testing.
And was it represented to you at that point in time that the athlete was ingesting those 7 supplements?
The supplements were provided to me in response to my request for any supplement or medication that the athlete was taking. So since it came to me in response to that question, I presume that these were supplements that were being taken. Yes.
Thank you.
So you received those from counsel or from the athlete?
I received them, I believe, from Nathan Gable, who I know is an attorney. He's not counsel, and I received them by common carrier.
Who is Nathan Gill?
But my question is, did Mr. De Silva give those to Nathan Gable then?
I assume he did. I don't have any direct knowledge that happened. I assume that is what happened.
So we know there is a list of items that were given, but we don't know if it's all the items that he was taking. It's just some items that were given to you?
The items that were provided to me were provided in response to my question for him to list and generate all of the supplements he was taking. I, of course, cannot speak to the truth of that statement. I simply accept it as truthful.
Do you have the list?
I actually do have the list on my computer if you'd like me to get it out.
No, I guess, and do you have the test results of where you sent this and what it came back with?
I can tell you that none of the samples tested positive for 17-methyl androstenediol, and that one of the supplements tested positive for drostanolone. I can have those that data generated. I do not have it here with me.
I'm just curious. This is a hearing on this man's career and what he's tested positive for. You would think you would want to introduce all of this to evidence. Just kind of, if you were provided all this and you have a list and you have the pictures and you have the test, why wouldn't this commission get them today?
Or why wouldn't they submit it to opposing counsel?
Why wouldn't you submit it to the opposing counsel so he can review it? Why wouldn't you take those actual items and actually send them to Smyrtle, let them test them as well? It's I don't know a better word to use, but it's hokey, but keep going.
Well, Commissioner Marnell, we don't have any way of providing the chain of custody. We never had that from the beginning of where those things came from. We asked Mr. Silva about them. That's how we got them. We tested them to the best of our ability.
I would agree that your chain of custody argument would be horrible in any event, but at least your testing quality would be.
I mean, we have litigation packets for the samples from both Smyrtle and Quest, but the fact that we don't have similar information that was provided to the Attorney General's office or provided to us today, it's based off of your oral testimony, but it's hard for us to believe based on the argument I think you're trying to make. It would have been better perceived had there been some basis or documentation for us to review and allow our opposing counsel to review as well. So,
Yeah. To be clear, I simply was never requested, so that's why I don't have them. I can tell you that I can both generate the results.
So you never submitted to counsel or to Mr. Silva any documentation
Correct.
of the results? This
That's
has all
correct.
been oral
It's been,
conversation.
yes, oral conversations.
All you have done is test the items that were given to you by Mr. Silva.
Again, they were not given to me
Well,
directly by Mr.
right.
Silva, but yes.
And then my question too would be is whether or not were these substances
We don't
disclosed
know.
on the pre-fight questionnaire?
We don't know whether they're all the substances, do we? All we're doing is relying on what he has said was taken by him or used by him during the process.
Absolutely. I have no way to confirm or deny the truth of any of that. I simply am accepting it.
Mr. Scott, as part of this testing that you did in the February and March timeframe, the supplements that were given to you, did they include the sexual performance enhancer that was identified as being contaminated in the answers to our complaint?
I have not read the answer, but I assume from your question the answer is yes. The vial that I was given that tested positive for trace amounts of drostanolone propionate was provided to be in that group of supplements that I was given.
And what was the substance?
I have no way of knowing what the substance was. It was unlabeled. It was in a clear dark blue vial that had to be broken to open.
So there's no proof that these substances were consumed prior to the test. These could all be sent to you as post factor.
I have no way of confirming or denying any of that, yes.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm a little interested, though, in this unlabeled substance, okay? What you're telling me is it didn't come in any type of standard packaging,
That's correct.
and it had no label.
It had no label.
You don't know if it was a prescription substance or if it was an over-the-counter substance. No representation was made to you one way versus another.
I believe, in terms of a representation, but I guess I'm going to go on my memory. I believe that this was not a prescription medication.
Do you know how this particular substance was being administered by the athlete?
The only way to administer this would have been to ingest it orally.
Okay, so it's something liquid was in the vial, and in your opinion, the only way to ingest that would be to ingest it orally.
Well, I shouldn't actually say that. Of course, one could also inject it, but the way that if what is in that bottle was represented to me is accurate, the way you take that is orally.
All right, but you don't know what the name or what the
I can
chemical
tell you
properties
that it was,
of that substance would be. And I'm going to try to do my very best not to talk over the top of you, and I'm going to ask for the same courtesy in
apologize.
exchange for you, all right?
Absolutely.
There's a record that's going to be being created, and it's real tough for those people taking down two people talking at once, okay? Now, and so back to my question, and that being is that you do not know either a name or an identifier than what was in this particular blue vial.
It has been represented to me that it was Cialis, but not prescription, not Cialis by the trade name, but instead a form of Cialis that was obtained not through prescription.
I just want to make a point of information. I am going to lose a commissioner in about 10 minutes, so I'd like to condense this for this testimony to continue within the next 5 minutes and wrap it up so that we can get to deliberation before 1 o'clock. There's no objection. I think the point has been established and the record shows that we do have the tests. The tests have been validated. They've been accepted. There's been an admission from the respondent. And so I think what we're trying to do now is go through some of the mitigating circumstances, but I think we all understand the perspective. So if there's any objection to that time frame order of business going forward in the next few minutes, please let me know.
I can push it back 5-10 minutes so we can get to the next one.
Great.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to, if you object to that, tell me and I will readjust based on that.
Well, I guess I just want, for the record, want to understand that, what we were trying to do was, Mr. Silva is maintaining he didn't knowingly or intentionally take an anabolic steroid. We're just trying to get the commission to where we got to of how this possibly could have ended up in this season.
So maybe I'm going to not interrupt you, so go ahead and finish your question. I'll go next.
Well, the only comment that I would wish to make is I want to make sure that they have the full opportunity to present a defense. And I don't want to have any issue unless there's going to be some type of a waiver of a challenge to what it is that
Well,
we
that's why I'm
intend to
asking
do.
the question and trying to express what I'm trying to accomplish, but if there's an objection to that, I will reevaluate based on what we need to do.
The time constraints removed. Proceed, please.
Okay.
So we can get on with this.
Pardon me?
We have no time
We have no
constraint.
time constraint. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I was just trying to manage.
Go ahead. Finish about the blue vial.
I have no further on the blue vial unless you have questions about it.
I do. Linville.
No further questions on the vial.
My questions would be directed towards Mr. Silva as far as the representation that this gentleman is making is that you were taking the substance in the blue vial. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And why don't you tell me what was in it and what you were using it for? I think we've heard them, but I'd like to hear you say what you were using it for.
Primeiro é um assunto pessoal meu, né? Eu acho que não tem que falar pra ele por que eu tava tomando isso.
Okay, so this is his particular subject.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Is his particular? He said his particular subject is his business why he was taking this substance.
So he refuses to answer the question in essence.
So there's no answer to the question.
Yes, no
Okay.
answer.
Now,
If I
let me ask this question though, in response
can
to
I
that.
finish, Pat?
No, I just want to know if he's taking the fifth on this. If he's pleading the Fifth Amendment.
You were taking. Você estava tomando essas substâncias?
Tava.
He was.
Okay. If I retract back then to the testimony provided by your expert witness and or the attorney, it's for sexual performance. I guess my question would be, and if you could take the fifth on this too, why wouldn't you just go get a doctor and get a prescription for Cialis or Viagra versus take a blue vial of our substance with a vial with blue liquid in it that you didn't even really know what it was? I mean, you could go to any doctor pretty much in America and get some Viagra or Cialis or the real stuff from a real pharmacy.
Porque eu não fui no médico pedir inscrição pro médico.
He could not go to the doctor asking this prescription before.
You
Okay.
will not?
He could not go. He didn't want to go. Isso você não queria ir.
Okay.
Pediu.
I don't have anything else, Mr. Chairman.
Continue, please.
If I could just turn it over to Mr. Scott again to talk about the January 9th test, just for the record, on, had the Quest test been performed?
Sure.
Thank you.
Of course, there's no way to be 100% certain of anything with regard to this, but I will just say this. The Smyrtle testing resulted in a concentration of approximately 13 nanograms per mil on all of the tests that were analyzed for drostanolone. So presumably, since Quest twice comes back as negative at that concentration found in Smyrtle through semi-quantitation, by the way, this is not a quantitative analysis. Presumably, it would also come back as negative on the 9th because there's no difference in concentration in the three samples.
So if I understand your testimony, you're presuming that if Quest would have tested the samples taken in January 9th specifically, that the Quest testing would have come up negative.
Yeah, there's no reason to believe otherwise.
All right, notwithstanding the fact that you acknowledge that you tested a vial that was being ingested by this athlete and that you found to be contaminated with drostanolone.
Yes, that's correct. I'm speaking only to the testing.
All right, and so the Quest testing in your testimony then would have been negative on January 9th as well as on January 31st, pre and post fight.
I think that's the only reasonable conclusion.
Thank you. Any further testimony?
No, I'm going to turn it over to, you can ask Mr. Silva questions.
I just want to confirm you had enough time to present your case and to present any testimony you need from Mr. Scott. I'm just trying to recover from what we discussed earlier.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Scott, did
Do
you
you
do
want
any
to take
test-
some time, Mr. Alonso, to determine whether you're satisfied? Because we did sort of take the shoes out from under you there for a minute.
Can we take a,
I'll give you a 2-minute recess so you can.
thank you.
wait for the translator, because if we're gonna get to the issue of a translation, we wanna make sure the translator is here to understand what the concern is, so.
You will swear.
Seeing that the translator is now available, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, and I'll ask with Mr. Eccles' permission, and I don't mean this in any negative way at all, that Mr. Silva feels like his testimony didn't get, the context of it maybe didn't get translated properly. So Ed Soares is here, and he's also fluent in Portuguese. So we could maybe swear him in, and you could check to make sure he's translating properly. But I think it's important, especially the answers that came across to your questions, Commissioner Marnell, I think taken completely, they're out of context, and then we need to address them. It's really important.
Mr. Soares, please come forward. You will be sworn in by Mr. Cope.
Sir, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to translate fully and honestly here today? Thanks, sir.
And Mr. Soares, what is your role with Mr. Silva?
I'm his friend, his advisor, and been with him throughout his career in fighting in the UFC.
Okay. Are you his manager?
Yes, I also work as that also.
Are you a licensed manager in the state of Nevada?
You are?
No, I'm not.
Sorry. Are managers required to be licensed in the state of Nevada?
No.
I'm a licensed agent. I'm a licensed agent internationally. Nationally, but I'm not a licensed manager in the state of Nevada.
So do you want to repeat
So why don't we start from scratch? My question was very simple. What was Mr. Silva's understanding of what was in the vial with the blue liquid, and what was he using it for?
And before he answers, let me clarify what Mr. Scott said. It was a blue vial with clear liquid.
My apologies, I've got it reversed. A blue vial with clear liquid.
Can you say it louder, please?
O que estava na garrafinha azul? O que você estava tomando e por que você estava tomando isso?
O que tinha na garrafinha azul era uma espécie de estimulante sexual, e um amigo meu trouxe da Tailândia e eu estava usando, e não fui no médico pedi uma autorização para o médico, porque esse tipo de suplemento não tem nos Estados Unidos nem no Brasil.
What was in the supplement was a sexual enhancement supplement, and the reason I didn't go to the doctors is because this particular supplement they don't have here in the U.S. or in Brazil. My friend brought it from Thailand, and that's why I was taking that. It was because I couldn't go to a doctor to get this particular substance that was working.
Can I go back to the original statement? And is the response that Mr. Silva just provided and the way it was translated different from the original response you heard?
Was a little different because he put more words now. He just said that was his business, that the reason he could not go to the doctor, that he was using this substance was his business, and he didn't want to answer. He didn't say about there's no this drug in Brazil. So he changed, he just put more words. So it's the reason I just translate what he said before.
But I think the clarification was that there was the notion that he was pleading the fifth was not, he wasn't pleading the fifth. He was saying it was his personal business.
Well, Commissioner
And now
Lundevall
he's
did a
answered.
pretty good job of clarifying that, and it was affirmed. But anyway, I guess unless you want to.
No, well, it's going to be, we can evaluate this in our deliberation as to whether or not.
I think what really was is a little bit lost in translation. I don't think she translated it wrong. I think that the way he said it and the way she translated it is where it was wrong. What he was saying, it was a personal issue. Not that he didn't want to answer you. He was just saying it was a personal issue, why he was taking it. And the way it was expressed didn't come off exactly in the context that he was meaning to, is what I'm saying.
So we had that clarified.
Okay,
So
cool.
And
So
now,
with-
can you explain why it is that he was taking this supplement that was given to him from a friend that had traveled with it from Thailand.
Agora você pode explicar por que você estava tomando esse remédio que teu amigo trouxe da Tailândia?
Porque é um assunto pessoal, né? Assim, é um estimulante sexual. Para que a gente toma um estimulante sexual?
He says the reason he was taking it is a personal reason because it's a sexual stimulant, and that's why he was taking it, is because to help him in that area.
And Ms. Mersch, is that what you heard?
Yes, he said it was his particular business and he was taking because he wants.
And so he's identified that it is his personal business, and he's refusing then to explain that personal business.
But he has the knowledge that it was an enhancing sexual pill.
Thank you.
Did it ever cross your mind taking a clear substance in a blue vial from a friend that came from Thailand with a fighter of your stature and all that you have on the line and all that you've come back from might not be a good move?
Já passou pela tua cabeça que você, o nível de atleta que você é, lutador, por tudo que você já deixou, tudo que você já passou, tomando um suplemento que estava vindo numa garrafinha azul, isso a qualquer momento passou pela tua cabeça?
Não. Assim, se eu tivesse a noção de que iria dar todo esse problema, não teria tomado. Mas todo mundo é passível de erro, e eu não sou diferente de ninguém.
He said, no, I didn't go through that didn't go through my thought process. I actually, I'm human and I make mistakes, and it definitely was a mistake. If I would have known that this supplement that I was taking for something else would have had this sort of a problem, I would have never taken it in the beginning.
Okay, I want to make sure. I just have two more quick questions. Is it his testimony, is it your testimony that you absolutely had no knowledge of what was in there that we tested positive for in these results?
Então você está falando que você não tinha nenhuma noção de que os exames testou positivo estava dentro daquele suplemento?
Não tinha a menor ideia. Por isso que eu até, para a mídia brasileira, eu falei, olha, não sei o que falar porque eu não sei o que está acontecendo. Depois que a gente testou tudo e foi pedido para que eu desse tudo que eu tinha usado durante o tempo que eu estava treinando e antes, que foi testado, que eu vi que era isso que tinha dado positivo.
Yeah, he had no idea that was in there. He had no idea, pretty much, and he was taking it for the purpose of the sexual enhancement, and that's why even in the media, after all this came out, he never said anything because he wasn't really sure what to say, because he didn't know how this would have came up positive in his test until the results came back from the testing, the further testing, that they found out that the drostanolone was in that substance. That's when it kind of all...
Eu nunca usei nenhum tipo de anabolizante, então eu nunca precisei usar de nenhuma substância ilegal para lutar. Então isso é um fato novo para mim também.
He said, I've never used any sort of anabolics or any sort of thing like that to fight. I've fought my whole career and I've never used that. So this is actually a new topic for me also.
And how long have you actually used that?
I can't.
How long have you used this?
Quanto tempo você tem usando isso?
Acho que eu usei, uns 3 meses. Antes da luta eu estava usando.
He said he's been using it for approximately 3 months prior to the fight. He was using it.
Is that the only time he's ever used it in his life?
Esse é o único momento que você let me ask the question.
Has he
That
ever used
particular
it prior
product
to
or
that
any
3 months?
sort of sexual enhancement
No,
product?
this particular product.
Esse é o único tempo que você usou esse remédio específico?
Yes.
Yes.
He has used it before.
No, that there was just those 3 months
Those 3
prior.
months.
That particular.
And is he aware? Are you aware of the product name that your friend told you this was, or was it just good
Você
stuff?
sabe o nome do produto ou só foi que o teu amigo falou que é uma coisa boa?
Ah, meu amigo falou que era uma espécie de estimulante sexual que ele usava e que era bom. E aí eu falei, tá, ok.
Yeah, his friend basically told him that it was a sexual stimulant, that it worked well, and he took it.
Okay. And what's your friend's name?
Que é teu amigo?
Marcos.
Marcos what?
Marcos.
Marcos Fernandes.
And where does he live?
Onde ele mora?
Thailand.
Thailand. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
I don't have any other
Was
questions.
this individual present at your fight?
Ele estava presente na tua luta?
Ah, não.
I don't have any other questions, Mr. Chairman.
How do you spell Marcos' last name?
Marco Fernandes.
Como
Sorry.
se escreve?
Ah, Fernandes, eu acho que. Ah, não sei. Em inglês, I don't know.
Probably Fernadez.
Can you spell it to you in Portuguese?
Você
or
pode,
translate?
você pode falar as letras em português e eu traduzo.
Ok, Marco Fernandes. É F. Fernandes. R. F-E-R. N.
F-E-R-N.
N-D-S.
A-D-E-S. Not a Z. I'm sorry.
All right. How long has he known him?
Quanto tempo você conhece ele?
Eu não conheço muito tempo. Um ano e pouco.
He doesn't know for a long time, just for 1 year.
What's the nature of the relationship between the two of them?
Qual a natureza qual a origem da amizade de vocês, quando vocês conheceram?
Ele vive na Tailândia e ele veio pro Brasil junto com o meu treinador de Muay Thai, o Cop, que às vezes a gente treina com ele. E aí ele ficou uma semana no Brasil e não deu só para mim, mas para os outros amigos do equipe.
So ele vive na Tailândia, amigo do seu treinador, e veio para o Brasil, você conheceu no Brasil.
Yes.
So Marcos Fernandes lives in Thailand and he knows his coach, and he came to Brazil with his coach, and he could know Marcos Fernandes one time training in Brazil, correct? Correto. Treinando no Brasil, correto?
When did Marcos make the suggestion that he might benefit from this substance that was in the blue vial?
Quando que o Marcos Fernandes sempre sugeriu que você pudesse tomar essa substância na garrafa no seu?
Não, na verdade estávamos todos num grupo na academia conversando sobre assuntos de homem, claro. E aí chegou nesse assunto e aí por algum motivo acabou que não, eu tenho, e é bom, a gente usa lá e tal. E eu falei, pô, vamos experimentar, vamos ver se é bom mesmo.
Mas você não lembra a data, então perguntou
Não,
quando?
não lembro.
So he said that he doesn't remember the date when he suggested this medicament, but they were in a meeting with a couple of friends in the gym. They were talking about men's stuff, and he suggests, I take this for it's better sexual enhancing. So, and then he took.
And did he trust Marcos to the point where he was not going to question what it was that he was ingesting?
Você confiou no que o Marcos sugeriu, no que ele estava te indicando para tomar?
Yes.
Yes, he trusted.
When did he first ingest the substance?
Quando foi a primeira vez que você ingeriu essa substância?
Não me lembro. Eu me lembro faz muito tempo. Assim, foi pouco antes de eu começar meu camping para minha última luta.
He doesn't remember.
Based upon his previous testimony, he had indicated that he had been taking it for about 3 months prior to his fight. Did he take it during November of 2014?
No seu primeiro depoimento você disse que você estava tomando os 3 meses antes da luta. Você
Sim, sim.
esteve tomando durante novembro de 2014?
Eu me lembro que eu tomei, assim, quando, um pouco antes de eu começar meu campo de treino. Eu acho que, não sei ao certo se dá 3 meses ou não.
He said that he doesn't remember exactly the date, but when he started his training, his camp training, his concentration for the fights.
Yeah, he said he started taking it before he started his training camp. He doesn't remember the exact
I
date.
don't remember exactly the
Approximately.
date, but I use um pouco antes de começar meu campo de treino.
So a little bit before the training start.
And when did the training start?
Você lembra quando você começou a treinar para a luta?
Não me lembro.
He doesn't remember.
Não lembro.
You have no recollection as to when your training starts, or specifically when you ingested it, other than your previous testimony that you were taking it at least the 3 months before your fight. Is that accurate?
Então, você testifica que você não lembra a data que você começou a ingerir essa substância, mas no seu primeiro depoimento você disse que seriam uns 3 meses antes da luta.
Eu não me lembro. Eu tô dando mais ou menos 3 meses que eu acredito que tenha sido, mas eu não tenho a data exata. Não tem como eu afirmar a data exata.
He said he just can't remember the exact date, and he just said 3 months because he thinks was before the fight.
Now, when was the last time that he took it?
Quando foi a última vez que você tomou essa substância?
A última vez que eu tomei foi quando eu cheguei em Los Angeles, para terminar meu camp training em Los Angeles.
The last time he took the substance when he arrived in Los Angeles to finish his training.
And when did he arrive in Los Angeles when to finish his training?
Quando você chegou a Los Angeles para terminar seu camp training?
Eu não lembro a data de quando eu cheguei. Não tenho certeza da data.
He's not sure the date.
A luta foi em... Quando foi a luta?
Dia 31 de janeiro.
Quando que eu cheguei?
Dia 8 de janeiro.
Eu acho que foi dia 8 de janeiro que eu cheguei aqui. Foi dia... Eu não tenho certeza, não tem como eu afirmar porque eu não tenho certeza.
He thinks that was January 8th when he arrived here before the fight.
Okay.
And so he acknowledges taking the drug that was in the blue vial during the month of January. Is that accurate?
Então você tem conhecimento, você tem ciência que você tomou essa substância dentro da garrafa azul durante janeiro.
Sim.
Yes.
Did he
has
reveal
knowledge.
his ingestion of the drug to anyone?
So can you repeat please?
Did he reveal the ingestion of this particular drug in the blue vial to anyone?
Você usou novamente essa...
Não, você falou com outras pessoas que
Sobre
você
essa
usou,
ingestão.
que você estava tomando isso.
Please only one at a time.
Okay, I was
Você comentou com alguém sobre essa ingestão dessa substância da garrafa azul?
Não, do meu camp training não, só com os amigos no Brasil, quando eu estava no Brasil, no momento que a gente conversou sobre a situação. Mas depois não.
No, he never revealed to anybody.
Let me turn your attention to a different topic. There were supplements that were revealed to Mr. Scott, my apologies. To Mr. Scott. Was he ingesting those supplements that were revealed to Mr. Scott?
Você estava tomando essa substância e você revelou para o Sr. Scott quando você estava tomando.
Quando deu o problema do doping, eu peguei todos os suplementos que eu estava tomando e entreguei para ele.
Deu problema com você.
Quando falaram que eu tinha caído no doping.
Okay, so he said that revealed to Mr. Scott when he was failed the doping.
I want to know, there were 7 substances that were revealed to Mr. Scott. Was he taking those 7 substances?
Você estava tomando aquelas substâncias você falou para o Sr. Scott que você estava tomando?
A última vez que eu tomei foi quando eu cheguei em Los Angeles para terminar meu campo de training.
So he said that he was using, he has knowledge that took the Mrs. Scott substance, and the last time when he arrived in Los Angeles.
All right. I've got 2 additional topics that I want to ask you questions upon. First is the pre-fight medical questionnaire. On the pre-fight medical questionnaire, you were asked if you were taking any supplements. The answer to that question was no. Why did he answer no to that
In the
question?
pre-fight questionnaire. So, ela perguntou no pre-fight questionnaire que você completou, você falou que não estava tomando nenhuma substância. Foi não. Por que você falou que não estava tomando nenhuma substância?
Porque eu não ia falar que estava tomando Viagra, né? É Cialis, né?
Okay. So he didn't want to say that he was using the enhanced performance sexual in the questionnaire. He didn't want to.
Até porque não era uma coisa assim que assim, eu tinha tomado muito perto da luta. Foi quando eu cheguei em Los Angeles. Então eu fiquei mais, acho que
Okay,
mês
so
e
he's
pouco.
saying that he took the substance close to the fight, and he didn't want to tell that he was using Viagra.
Turning your attention then to another topic, the benzos that he's admitted in ingesting. Explain the circumstances as to why he ingested those.
Você estava tomando essas substâncias, por que você ingeriu essas substâncias dos benzos?
Na noite da pesagem, depois da pesagem eu fui pro quarto, senti um pouco de dor nas costas, não estava conseguindo dormir também.
So in the day of the waiting, he was not feeling well after the pesagem. Você não estava sentindo bem? Okay. After the waiting, he was not feeling well, and then he went to his room and he took the benzos to make him better.
Where did he get the benzos?
Onde você tomou os benzos? Onde você pegou?
Eu tive, quando eu estava no Brasil, eu tive uma crise no ciático e acabei ficando uma noite no hospital e foi uma dos medicamentos que o médico me prescreveu.
So
Se eu sentisse dor, era para mim tomar.
So when he was in Brazil, he was having a crisis in his sciatic, and he was in pain. And then a doctor friend, he prescribed him this substance to him if he has a crisis again in his sciatic.
And how many occasions then had he taken the benzos?
Quantas vezes você tomou benzos?
No Brasil, eu acho que eu tomei uma vez no hospital, que eu fiquei uma noite no hospital. E na noite da pesagem eu tomei antes de dormir.
So in Brazil, he just had one time when he was at the hospital, and the night of the waiting here.
And when was the time at the hospital? What was the approximate date of that taking?
Você lembra mais ou menos a data aproximada quando você estava no hospital no Brasil?
Não lembro.
He doesn't remember.
Did he recall, did he reveal to anyone the night that he took the benzos that he intended to do so?
Você lembra se você revelou para alguém na noite que você pegou o benzo? Você estava com a intenção de tomar, você revelou para alguém?
Não.
Não lembro.
Não falei para ninguém.
No, he didn't reveal to anybody.
And the next day then when he appeared for the fight, did he reveal to any of the Nevada Athletic Commission staff that he had ingested that drug?
E no outro dia que você apareceu para a Comissão Atlética de Nevada, você revelou para alguém que você tinha ingerido essa substância?
No outro dia? Como assim no outro dia?
Você revelou para alguém antes, no outro dia depois da pesagem?
Não, porque assim, a pesagem foi na sexta. Eu lutei no sábado. Então não tinha como eu falar com a comissão que eu tinha tomado, não tinha por que eu falar. Se eu tivesse tomado antes da pesagem, eu iria comunicar à comissão como eu sempre fiz. Todos os remédios que eu sempre tomei antes, durante o tempo que eu estava em Vegas para a luta, eu sempre comuniquei, sempre levei a bula dos remédios. Só que eu tomei depois. E aí não falei por quê. Até porque era minha volta, a minha luta. Eu passei a noite inteira com dor e excitado para lutar e um pouco nervoso, porque era minha volta depois que eu quebrei minha perna e por algum motivo não falei para ninguém.
So he said he didn't reveal to anybody after he took the substance. He was in his room in painful. After the waiting, he was excited to his appearance. It was his return after he broke his leg. So he didn't talk to anybody that he took this substance, even to the flight commission.
And one last question then for him. Ask him if he acknowledges his responsibility to know what it is that he ingests and whether or not that it is appropriate for him to do so.
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Does he acknowledge that it's his responsibility to know what it is that he is ingesting?
Você tem conhecimento em suas responsabilidades, conhecimento de quais são as substâncias que você estava tomando? Você tem conhecimento de uso?
O benzo que eu estava tomando, eu tenho conhecimento que era por uma dor que eu estava sentindo, eu não estava conseguindo dormir. Quanto ao Cialis, eu não sabia que poderia estar contaminado, até porque não era uma coisa que passava na minha cabeça. Eu sei que pelo atleta que eu sou e etc, eu devia ter ido no médico, mas como eu já havia dito, eu sou um ser humano e sou passivo de falhas.
So he just has a knowledge that he took the benzo, he has this knowledge, but the other substance he believes was contaminated, and he didn't know that, and believes that every human being has your mistakes, and he knew that he could find a doctor, but he just agreed that he did a mistake.
So he went to the doctor for a medical issue of a sciatic nerve, but he did not go to the doctor for the issue related to his sexual performance.
I guess I don't know that he's saying there was a medical issue
But he's saying he went to the hospital.
for his back. But
Correct.
I'm talking about the other issue you raised.
Okay,
And
but
that's-
my question is, he could go to, I guess I'm trying to make a statement, he could go to the hospital for issues with his back. But he could not go to the doctor, he couldn't find the time to go to the doctor to get a prescription for the issue his personal issue.
Understood, but I guess what I'm trying to clarify for the record is I don't think he said that it was a medical issue that needed medical attention. It was an enhancement.
And I think that's just the issue, that he refuses to answer the question, so it's speculation on your part, as well as on our part, as to why it is that he was ingesting.
I'm just trying to, this sort of is his friend and his agent, his manager. Did you know that he was consuming supplements prior to the fight?
No, I don't really get too involved with that. I don't know what he was taking, but to address the comment you said before, when he went to the hospital for his pain in his back, that was all over the internet. He did go to the hospital for that. And what at that point is when the doctor prescribed him the benzos, and and part of that was a sciatic nerve and anxiety of him coming back. So I just kind of wanted to clear it up because some things got a little crossed up there, and I just wanted to make sure that it got translated 100% what it was, and what it was is it was anxiety, it wasn't excitement. They were saying, he was saying it was anxiety, his pain, and everything the night of the fight, going into fight, that's why he took those benzos, and it was prescribed from the doctor that prescribed it when he went to the hospital in Brazil, which I recall that might have been about mid-December, and it was all over the internet. You could look it up. He stayed the night in the hospital because of some back pain. So that is on the internet because it was declared.
And he only took the benzo the time he went to the hospital and the night before the fight.
Yes.
So there's only 2 times he consumed the benzo.
Então só tinha 2 vezes que você consumiu o remédio que você tomou.
Fui no hospital e eu fiquei no hospital um dia, uma noite no hospital e tomei no hospital e a médica falou, se você sentir dor ou não conseguir dormir por conta da dor, você toma de novo. E depois eu viajei para Los Angeles e quando eu fui para a luta, no dia da pesagem, à noite, eu tomei de novo porque eu senti pouco de dor nas costas e não estava conseguindo dormir.
He said that the doctor said that after he left the hospital, he took that medication at the hospital. Once he left the hospital, the doctor said if you have any problem with pain, if you're not able to sleep, take this again. He relatively didn't have any pain, did not make him sleep, except the night prior to the fight is when
eu posso conseguir o prontuário médico se precisar.
He said he can provide the prescription he received. He provided that.
Any other further questions about this? Mr. Eccles, or do you want to wrap this up, Mr. Alonso, or do you want to make any further comment? I'll come back to you after Mr. Eccles. Okay. Mr. Eccles?
I just have a question for Mr. Scott.
Sure.
Mr. Scott, has a court ever found that you're not competent to testify as an expert witness?
A court has not, but a New York City Police Commissioner, when asked for me to be submitted as an expert in anti-doping, rejected it, I believe, on the basis that I could not provide him medical advice as to clenbuterol.
Thank you.
Mr. Alonso?
I guess, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, again, as we've talked about before, and I think in terms of the First Amendment complaint, if you find that there are violations, then I think that it would be fair to treat Mr. Silva as a first-time offender. And I think it's important to point out the way the purse worked here. There was a show purse and a win bonus. And I think if you compare boxers to MMA fighters, they are on a little bit different standard because boxers don't use the win bonus. And so I would ask you to take that into consideration. If you're going to remove the win bonus, then I would ask that the fine be applied to the entire amount rather than removing it and then applying the amount, because I think you could have 2 people in the same, with the same exact circumstances. One is a boxer and one's an MMA fighter. You'd have very different financial penalties.
What was the win bonus?
200,000.
And what was the show first?
600.
Thank you. Please stand back and thank you, sir. Just call back in. You should have stand back.
He's going to use his selection. It's crazy.
It's pretty good. Okay, so let me present a hypothetical. Supposing I was consuming a substance on January 8th, and that did contain the steroid, and I stopped using that steroid on January 8th, would that steroid or that substance cause me to test positive on January 3rd?
Okay, if we're specifically talking about droxanilone,
Yes, please.
the metabolites we detected pre and post fight had to have been administered about a week before we tested them. That's how long that window of protection is. So if they ceased using that product on the 8th of January, That's not consistent with what we saw on the 31st of January.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Can you explain that? Would Mr. Silva care to explain that?
Do you want me to translate what you just?
And the testimony from the doctor is that that test on the 31st would have to be no longer than a week old, so if that doesn't jive with the 20.
Ele falou, o doutor falou que os resultados que saíram no dia 31 de janeiro não tem como você tomando esse produto no dia 8 de janeiro e ainda aparecer no dia 31 de janeiro nos teus exames, porque normalmente esse produto sai do teu sistema durante uma semana. Então, você vai ter que, para isso acontecer isso, você tem que tomar durante a semana, durante 7 dias do exame. Você tem uma resposta para isso?
Tenho, eu me lembro que eu tomei quando eu cheguei em Los Angeles. Eu tomei quando eu cheguei em Los Angeles e acho que antes da gente viajar eu tomei também, antes de ir pra acho que 4, 5 dias antes de a gente ir pra Vegas eu tomei.
He says that he recalls taking it when he got to Los Angeles, and maybe he did take it.
Na noite que a gente foi pra Vegas. Na noite que eu fui pra Vegas, eu show também.
The night that he went to Vegas, when he got here for the week of the
Foi na
fight.
semana, acho que na
The
semana.
week of the fight, você tomou ou capaz que tomou?
Tomei.
He said he took it.
Is that correct?
So he said that he took it in the week he was coming to Las Vegas, and he took it in the January 8th. Sorry. Yes. So he said. Okay. So he said he took the substance when he was coming to Las Vegas, when he traveled here, and January 8th again.
Na noite que eu fui pra Vegas eu tomei.
Em Green Lights, você lembra o dia que você foi pra Vegas, a noite que você na semana da outra.
Foi na semana.
A data the date that we left to go to Vegas, if I recall correctly, it was that Tuesday, the week prior to the fight. So I don't know the exact, maybe the 27th or something.
So now we know dates. We didn't know dates previously.
The date. He's saying the date that we came to Vegas.
But he testified January 8th.
Right.
Was the last time he ingested the substance in the blue bottle. Now he's testifying
that he did after.
Right.
And we have a remembrance of dates at this point in time.
No, I'm remembering the date because I remember the date.
Well, we asked you the dates.
We didn't ask you the dates, sir. I'm just saying the dates that we came, because this just came up now about the date that he traveled to Vegas, because she was saying that, and I said
The point is, I think we can get to a point, I think we can start to see, from my perspective, some major inconsistencies in the testimony. And I think I've had enough testimony, unless there's additional testimony, but I do want to address one issue. I just handed Mr. Alonso the pre-fight questionnaire. There are 2 signatures on that application. There is Mr. Silva's, and there is a second individual, which I think is Mr. Suarez. Is that correct? So your testimony is that is your signature on the pre-fight questionnaire?
Yes, I agree. And when I asked him, like I told you, I don't know what supplements you take, so I said, what supplements do you take? And I fill it out and sign it.
And he had an understanding at the time that you were asking those questions that he had a duty to be honest in response to the influence, correct?
E você sabe que nos momentos que eu fiz essas perguntas para você, dessas perguntas no dia da pesagem, que você tinha para ser honesto com isso.
Claro, eu não falei que tomei o Cialis porque, eu ia falar que a comissão que eu tomei Cialis, tô falando agora porque o negócio estava contaminado. Se não tivesse contaminado, eles não iam saber também.
He said, he didn't disclose that he was taking the Cialis because he didn't think it was going to come up.
So now we have a brand name of what the substance is.
Or no, I'm just saying whatever I don't know what the brand name is, but he just referred. I'm just translating what he's saying.
He specifically referred to Cialis in his testimony.
Right now, he just said he didn't mention the Cialis because it wasn't. I'm just translating that.
All right, my question is different though.
Okay.
When you asked him the questions, that were set forth on the pre-fight medical questionnaire. He gave you answers. Did he understand that he had an obligation to be truthful in giving those answers to you?
Quando eu estava fazendo essas perguntas que estavam no questionário, você sabe que você tinha uma obrigação para ser honesto com todas as suas respostas?
Claro, se eu tivesse tomado todos os remédios que nas outras vezes eu tomei quando eu estava em fase de luta, como houve em outras vezes, como aconteceu em outras vezes, eu teria falado, entendeu? A minha falha foi não falar que tomei o Cialis, porque, porra, como é que eu vou falar pra você que eu tomei Cialis, meu irmão? Pra quê? Entendeu?
He said prior to, in other fights, whatever medication he took prior to the fights and these other fights, he's always disclosed and brought the medication to show. He said, I would feel very uncomfortable looking to you and saying that I'm taking Cialis, prior to the fight, and that's why I never expressed that in the questionnaire.
Mr. Scott, did you test Cialis or did you test the substance in a blue vial?
I tested the substance in a translucent blue vial.
So you never tested Cialis?
I did not attempt to identify the bulk of the substance in the blue vial. Was not provided with anything that had the name Cialis on it. I was told it was Cialis, but it was clearly not the brand name.
Thank you.
Ms. Mertz, the response to the last question that was translated by Mr. Silva, was that an accurate translation?
Yes, was.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Eccles, do you have any further comment, or are you close? Are you done with your case?
Would Mr. Alonso agree with me that the testimony of Dr. Eigner is that of an expert toxicologist?
I have no reason to object to that, no.
Okay. I don't have a closing. There's been plenty of testimony. I leave it to the commission to evaluate the credibility of the witnesses. I would add one request, though, when you're discussing it in your deliberations, if you could make reference to how you weigh the value of testimony and what they brought to the table of Dr. Scott versus that of Dr. Eigner. That would be helpful for the issuance of an order.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Alonso, your closing, sir.
Just, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I think I've covered it all in terms of, we're up to during the deliberations, and my understanding is the range will be 9 to 12 months. And we talked about the penalty, the financial penalty, and I would hope that you would take his history and all those factors into consideration, his age, and err on the side of the lower end of that spectrum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further comment from your We're now going to enter.
I do have one more question. Does Mr. Silva recall the last time that he was enhanced tested in his career, or prior to his injury? Was he always tested on fight night, pre-post? Had he ever been subjected to enhanced in competition or out of competition testing prior to his injury?
Antes que você se machucar, você se lembra a qualquer momento você sendo testado fora de, so you're saying out of the, not just the fight night, like out of competition?
Was this the first time he'd ever been tested in any other way other than fight night?
Você já foi testado fora sendo a noite da luta?
Eu acho que sim, acho que foi.
Yes, he will.
And what fight was that?
No, this was the only fight.
This is the only fight.
The only
So
fight that
his
he
entire career, he's been tested on the night of the fight, pre-post, but never in advance, because with his injury, he was definitely prior to the enhanced testing era.
Então ele está falando que antes dessa luta, essa foi a primeira vez que você foi testado fora de sendo testado da noite da luta.
Antes de quebrar a perna, nunca fui testado antes da luta. Essa foi a primeira vez.
He said prior to him breaking his leg, this is the first time he's ever been tested outside of the pre and post of his fight night.
Thank you. Any follow-up after that?
No.
Okay, we're gonna enter deliberations. Is there any objection from anybody before you want to make any additional comments? Hearing none, we'll now enter deliberations. At this point in time, the commission will determine where it wants to go as far as a motion and what penalty it wants to impose. I'm gonna start this one. I think, given the testimony, and I may be out on an island on here, but given the testimony we heard today, it's quite evident there are some major inconsistencies in what I've heard and the testimony I've heard. And for that reason, I would actually proceed with going on the higher end for a penalty. The fine amount doesn't really make a difference to me, but what does make a difference to me is the amount of time that the suspension occurs. And for that, I would recommend 7 days, along with our other stand.
7 days?
I mean, 12 months, sorry, from the time of the fight. And I say that given the testimony we hear today. I think there's been very similar instances where we've had these types of situations, and when the fighter does come forward and is consistent in the testimony and takes some responsibility and shows some remorse, but I don't think that exists today. And that's my personal opinion.
I'm going to start with the easy stuff. We had a pre-fight medical questionnaire. That pre-fight medical questionnaire was quite specific. It says, have you taken any medication, drug, cream, inhalant, or injection, whether prescription, over-the-counter, from anyone or any place in the last month? If yes, explain. The answer to that was given by Mr. Silva was none. And we have testimony from Mr. Silva's side, first and foremost, that he was taking at least 7 supplements that should have been disclosed to us during that period of time. So we have an intentional falsification then of the pre-fight medical questionnaire that's been admitted then by Mr. Silva. His reason for falsifying that is that he did not want to reveal that he was taking some type of a drug or a supplement for performance enhancement. And therefore, it's an admission, from my perspective, of an intentional falsification. Second, we have an admission then of a positive test from January 9th of 2015. The explanation for that is because he was taking a contaminated substance. We have an admission that in fact that he was taking the benzos the night before, and that there was no revelation of that information for him. There has been a contest to the findings of Smyrna for the post-fight and the pre-fight, both A and B testing, and the contest to that has been, well, Quest didn't find the same thing. To respond to that, though, the claim has been made that Quest wouldn't have found the finding in January, on January 9th of 2015. If that's the case, then none of the Quest findings would have revealed the ingestion of the contaminated substance that's been admitted then by Mr. Silva to have resulted in a positive test January 9th, as well as pre- and post-fight test on January 31st, which is entirely explainable. Quest does a very rudimentary type of a testing. It is less refined than that of Quest. In other words, if you liken this to fishing with a net, the net that Quest fish with has got larger weave. The net that Smyrtle fishes with has got a tighter weave, and it catches more boats. The Smyrtle findings then, I think, have been demonstrated for January 9th, as well as for January 31st, both pre- and post-fight testing. I agree with Commissioner and our chairman in that there have been additional inconsistencies. Even given those inconsistencies, and if you attribute those to the possibly the issues associated with some type of a translation, I think the admissions that have been made and the explanations that have been offered by Mr. Silva demonstrate that there should be a liability finding against him both on the January 9th substances, the January 31st substances, as well as the falsification of the information on the pre-fight medical questionnaire. And so I would agree that we should be at the higher range of the scale when it comes to the penalties to be imposed.
I would echo a tremendous amount of inconsistencies. I don't know any other way to say it, but I don't feel like we're getting the whole story. I'm not gonna say it's a lie. I'm not gonna say not telling the truth under oath, but I'm not getting the whole picture here. In the past, I've been pretty brutal about people I don't think are giving us the whole story. I'm definitely in favor of the upper end of the range on a number of the items.
I certainly agree with my fellow commissioners. I am confused and a bit frustrated myself as to your responses to some very delicate questions. I look at the entire answer with respect to sexual enhancement as though it's almost a masking agent for the potential intentional use of something that would be forbidden by this commission. And there have been inconsistencies, as pointed out by the chairman and Commissioner Lundvall, with respect to those questions. So I would be supportive as well, Chairman, of the higher end, and even higher end today will be far less than higher end 60 days from now.
To address Mr. Eccles' request, I don't think there's a need to do a weighing of the testimony. I think given the testimony that we have, because there was no challenge that was made to the findings by Smyrna or request, there was an attempt to provide an explanation by Mr. Scott vis-a-vis why it is that those positive tests were obtained by Smyrna. And so to the extent that Mr. Scott's testimony, we will use it in making our findings. And so I don't think that there needs to be an evaluation and a weighing and a determination as to which expert is maybe more credible. I'd be prepared to make a motion that we would impose a 12-month suspension on Mr. Silva, that he be required to disgorge his win bonus, that he be required to disgorge 30% of his show first, that he be required to present a clean test upon reapplication or his next fight in the state of Nevada, that we change the outcome on change the result then on the fight that he had on January 31st, and that he be required to reimburse the Attorney General and the testing costs that occurred in violation of that athletic commission. That would be my motion.
There's been a motion by Commissioner Lundvall. Is there a second?
Second that.
There's been a motion by Commissioner Marnell. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Alonso. Thank you, Mr. Silva, for being here today. Appreciate you being here.